Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tesla's first quarter 2021 Q&A webcast. I'm joined today by Elon Musk, Zachary Kirkhorn, and a number of other executives. Our Q1 results were announced at about 1 p.m. Pacific time in the update deck we published at the same link as this webcast. During this call, we will discuss our business outlook and make forward-looking statements. These comments are based on our predictions and expectations as of today. Actual events or results could differ materially due to a number of risks and uncertainties, including those mentioned in our most recent filings with the SEC. During the question and answer portion of today's call, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. Please press star one now if you would like to join the question queue. But before we jump into Q&A, Elon has some opening remarks. Elon?
Great, thank you. Q1 2021 was a record quarter on many levels. Tesla achieved record production, deliveries, and surpassed $1 billion in non-GAAP net income for the first time. And we've seen a real shift in customer perception of electric vehicles, and our demand is the best we've ever seen. So this is, to be totally frank, we're used to seeing a reduction in demand in the first quarter, and we saw an increase in demand. So that exceeded the normal seasonal reduction in demand in Q1. Model 3 became the best-selling mid-size premium sedan in the world. In fact, I should say the best-selling luxury sedan of any kind in the world. The BMW 3 Series was for the longest time the best-selling premium sedan. It's been exceeded by the Tesla Model 3. And this is only 3.5 years into production and with just 2 factories. For Model 3 to be outselling its combustion engine competitors, I think is quite remarkable. In the past couple of quarters, we delivered roughly 250,000 Model 3s. Which translates to an annualized rate of 500,000 per year. When it comes to Model Y, we think Model Y will be the best-selling car or vehicle of any kind in the world, and probably next year. I'm not 100% certain next year, but I think it's quite likely. I'd say more likely than not that in 2022, Model Y is the best-selling car or truck of any kind in the world. And with regard to full self-driving beta continues to make great progress. But this is definitely one of the hardest technical problems that exists, that's maybe ever existed. Really, in order to solve it, we basically need to solve a pretty significant part of artificial intelligence, specifically real-world artificial intelligence. And that sort of AI, the neural nets need to be compressed into a fairly small computer, a very efficient computer that we've designed, but nonetheless, a small computer that's using on the order of 70 or 80 watts. So this is, I think, a much harder problem than if you were to use, say, 10,000 computers in a server room or something like that. This has got to fit into a smallish brain. And I think with the elimination of radar, we're finally getting rid of one of the last crutches. Radar was really, it was making up for some of the shortfalls of vision, but this is not good. You actually just need vision to work. And when vision works, it works better than the best human. It's like having 8 cameras. It's like having eyes in the back of your head, the sides of your head, and 3 eyes at different focal distances looking forward. This is and processing it at a speed that is superhuman. There's no question in my mind that with a pure vision solution, we can make a car that is dramatically safer than the average person. But it is a hard problem because we are actually solving something quite fundamental about artificial intelligence. We basically have to solve real-world vision AI, and we are. So, and key to solving this is also having just a massive data set, having well over 1 million cars on the road that are collecting data from very sort of corner case rare situations. Sort of like so many weird things in the world, like a truck carrying a truck, or a car with one example is a car is an actual example. A car with a kayak on the roof, where the kayak has a little weight dangling from the front of the kayak in front of the car, and yet the car must ignore this. Just look at the road. It's really quite tricky, but I am highly confident that we will get this done. This quarter, and I think we'll continue to see that a little bit in Q2 and Q3. So Q1 had some of the most difficult supply chain challenges that we've ever experienced in the life of Tesla. Insane difficulties with supply chain, with parts over the whole range of parts. Obviously, people have heard about the chip shortage. This is a huge problem. But then, in addition to that, for example, we had quite a bit of difficulty scaling drive unit production in China because we were unable to get critical engineers there because of COVID quarantine restrictions, which meant that Tesla worldwide was dependent on drive units made at our factory in Nevada. So that was a very challenging situation. I think we're mostly out of that particular problem. Those are just two of many challenges. So the team's really done an incredible job dealing with really severe supply chain shortages. See, with respect to the Model S and X, there were more challenges than expected in developing the Plaid Model S, or what's called the Palladium program, which is the new version of Model S and X, which has a revised interior and a new battery pack and new drive units and new internal electronics and has, for example, a PlayStation 5 level infotainment system. There's just a lot of issues encountered. Ensuring that the new factory was super safe was quite hard because we're packing more energy in a smaller space. It took quite a bit of development to ensure that the battery of the new SX is safe. And we're trying to get all the details in the cars slowly for the past few months, but we're just stacking them up in the yard and just making refinements to the cars that we've built. But we do expect to ramp Model S production and start delivering them probably next month. And then to be in sort of fairly high volume production for the S in Q3 and to start delivering Model X in Q3 as well. I think as we ramp up, I think probably the demand for the new SX will be quite high. It's really just going to be a question of ramping supply chain and internal production processes. So probably we're going to aim to produce over 2,000 SX per week. Perhaps if we get lucky, upwards of 2,400 or 2,500. This again is contingent on global supply chain issues, which are just a lot of factors outside of our control here. But I do think these things will get sold, so it's just a matter of time, and then we'll be doing well over 2,000 SX per week. And it's a great car. It actually costs us less to produce, a little bit less to produce, but it is a superior product. In conclusion, there's a lot to be excited about in 2021 and 2022. We're building factories as quickly as we can. Both Texas and Berlin are progressing well, and we expect to have initial limited production from those factories this year and volume production from Texas and Berlin next year. At the same time, we're continuing to ramp production of Model Y in Fremont and Shanghai. In the background, we're continuing development work on the Semi, Cybertruck, the Roadster, and other products. Thanks to everyone at Tesla who made this year a huge success. Now, on to questions.
Thank you very much. We have some remarks from Zachary Kirkhorn as well.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks, Elon. So congratulations to the Tesla team on breaking multiple records in the first quarter of 21, as Elon had mentioned, which is typically the most difficult of the year for many reasons. To summarize the quarter, I think it's best understood by three key items. First, we successfully launched and began the ramp of Model Y in Shanghai, achieving positive gross margin in the first quarter of production and receiving a great reception from the market. Second, as Elon mentioned, although we began the production process for the Model S during the quarter, we had not yet begun customer deliveries. The reduction in Model S and X deliveries from Q4 to Q1 were a meaningful headwind to free cash flows and profit generation. For example, we incurred an estimated $200 million of direct P&L impact relating to this program in Q1, the majority of which is reflected in COGS, and that's before even considering the impact of lost revenue and profits as a result of the transition. And as Elon mentioned, we expect the first deliveries to begin shortly. Third, as we continue to work through the instability of the global supply chain, particularly around semiconductors and port capacities, while the Tesla team, in partnership with our suppliers, did tremendous work keeping our factories running, we did experience high expedite costs in the quarter, and they were also higher than they were in Q4, with some minor interruptions to production over the course of the quarter. But we believe that this landscape is improving, but it does remain difficult and it's an evolving situation. If we double-click within net income, auto gross margin, excluding credits, improved sequentially and year over year. This is in spite of the cost mentions for S and X and expedites and a reduction in global ASPs, as our cost structure as a company is reducing at an even faster pace. So as we look out over the course of the year, we feel optimistic about our gross margin strength, particularly as some of these headwinds we're experiencing start to be resolved. On services and other margins, these have recovered and are trending towards profitability, aided by strength in the used car business, operational improvements in service, and additional service revenue opportunities that help absorb fixed overheads. On energy gross margins, these remained negative for a second quarter. This is driven by solar roof-related ramp costs and winter seasonality in the lease PPA business. We continue to manage through a multi-quarter backlog on Powerwall. We're working as fast as we can to increase production, and this will aid in profitability of this business as those volumes increase. On operating expenses, these increased for Q1, which is driven by our investments in technology and growth. In particular for R&D, this includes the structural battery pack and 4680 cells, investments in the new SNX, and our neural net and silicon investments. On the SG&A side, we're setting up infrastructure and support for both China and EMEA in anticipation of volume to come there. And as I've said before, our plans show that we remain on track for sustained industry-leading operating margins. Double-clicking on cash flows, we continue to generate positive free cash flows, and this was despite the significant working capital headwinds from SNX. Additionally, we are making progress reducing various forms of debt. We also invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin during the quarter, then trimmed our position by 10%, which contributed to a small gain in our Q1 financials. Taking a step back, we've generated $8 billion in operating cash flows and $4 billion in free cash flows over the past 4 quarters. As we look forward, our plans remain unchanged for long-term growth of 50% annually, and we believe we're on track to exceed that this year as we guided to last quarter. Global demand remains meaningfully higher than production levels, and so we're driving as fast as we can to increase our production rates. As we think about Q2 and Q3, these quarters should largely be driven by execution on SNX, as we've discussed, continued ramp of Model Y in Shanghai, and the associated cost reductions of these programs. And we expect profitability and cash generation to evolve over the course of the year in line with those improvements. And then as we get towards the end of the year, our story will pivot towards the launch and ramp of our newest factories in Austin and Berlin. So there's certainly no shortage of exciting things for us to work on and look forward to. Thank you, and we'll open it up for questions.